TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I'm your friendly neighborhood philosopher, David Wood, and with me now is the man who has dedicated his life to talking about an internal spiritual struggle that convinces people to go to the gym. Shame.
It is, because so many people, obviously the epidemic of obesity, David, makes it very clear that not enough people are going on jihad. And so it's a good thing that we're doing this, because there's not enough jihad in the world, and we need to get these gyms packed.
Everyone needs a little more jihad in their lives. Because
That's
jihad just means struggle, ladies and gentlemen, and we need to struggle against poor eating habits and things like that.
And kafirs and
yeah,
whatever.
them too. In fact, they're related, because if you get all shredded up, you can do a better job of hacking up kafirs and so on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, Muhammad Hijab showed up in a news story this week that I've got ready, and I thought about that his jihad is hitting the gym so he can hit the kafirs all the harder.
Wait, so are we saying that Muhammad Hijab is actually making it to the latest jihad news that we're bringing?
Yeah, Muhammad Hijab. Now, the problem is I got so much jihad because we unfortunately missed last week. It's going to take me a minute to find this.
By the way, I don't know how you find anything, because I've seen your computer and there'll be like 100 tabs open at the top, which when the tabs are shrunk to that small, you can't see what anything is. You just have to click through everything.
Yeah. Well, this is our problem, David, and I know it's my problem.
It's your struggle. My problem. It's your jihad. That's your jihad.
So I haven't figured out. I got to take some time before we come back next time. Got to take some time and figure out how to organize these things so that it's just easy to find. But I can tell you the story. Actually, it was about Ilhan Omar, and she got caught in a bit of an inconsistency between her political positions and her religious ones, because of course she's a hijab-wearing Sharia adherent Muslim, and she wished gays a happy Pride Month at the beginning of this month, whereupon Muhammad Hijab said, "Are you even a Muslim? Don't you know what Islam teaches about homosexual activity?" And so I thought it was interesting. He was widely quoted all around the world in news stories about this. And it's interesting to note that there is an inconsistency there, and political expediency sometimes leads even pious and observant Muslims to do something, to take positions that are against their religious positions. But this is a hazardous thing for them to do because of Islam's death penalty for heresy and for apostasy.
So the quick outline would be, Ilhan Omar says, "Happy Pride Month." Muhammad Hijab says, "What are you talking about? You're not supposed to be doing that." At which point, maybe she sent him a private message saying, "Come on, trying to subjugate these people, and I need all the alliances I can get right now."
Yeah, it was even a bit more ominous as well, because I found it finally, David, and Muhammad Hijab specifically said to her, "Do you understand that Islam prohibits homosexual sexual practices? Have you left Islam?" Now that, of course, is a very loaded question, because if she left Islam, she would be under a death sentence. And so it's an ominous question from Muhammad Hijab to ask her, and one that carries an unmistakable whiff of a threat behind it.
Yeah, that is when someone like Hijab is asking if you're his buddy Ali Dawa, they're looking forward to the day when they get political control over other people and so on, but they obviously want the right politicians in place to carry out the death penalty for apostasy. But isn't it interesting that, the people who are actually in place would be the ones that people like Ali Dawa want to execute for apostasy? You know what I mean? It's like, wow.
They're their friends. That's their ally.
This is strange
The
stuff.
ones who are helping them because they would denounce you and me as Islamophobes and so on, and ally with Ali Dawa, not realizing that they're pronouncing their own death sentence.
Quick comment here from Reasoned Answers. Reasoned Answer says, I have compiled a lot of data on responses to your what channels to recommend video. Let me know if you want it. Yes, if you've actually done what I was going to do, which is sort of tally up the results and stuff and see which channels are recommended most frequently and so on, because there are like thousands of comments on that. But yeah, if you've done any of that work, Reasoned Answers, yeah, send me a message. All right, what do you got next, Robert? Because there, I've even heard of some jihad over this past 2 weeks.
Well, let's talk about the big stories. The biggest story, unfortunately, is out of Nigeria, where during Sunday Mass at St. Francis Catholic Church, the city escapes me right now. Oh, in Ondo, in Owo, excuse me, Ondo State, St. Francis Catholic Church, right in the middle of Mass, people who had disguised themselves as parishioners got up, set off a bomb, opened fire as well. The official death toll is over 50, but there have been many Nigerians I've seen on Twitter saying, no, it's well over 100. I am not saying that's necessarily the case, but there are considerable amount of reports of that. Now, one interesting thing about this whole thing is that eyewitnesses in the church said that the people who did this were Fulanis. And the Fulanis, of course, are a group of people who have been carrying out a very violent jihad against Christians in Nigeria for many years. So this was immediately believable. So when I posted this information on Jihad Watch and it went to Twitter, immediately I was inundated with Nigerians telling me they were not Fulanis, they were not Muslims. And well, okay, if they were Fulanis, they were not Muslim Fulanis, but 99% of Fulanis are Muslims. And if they were Fulanis, Muslims, they were not jihadis. And it seems that there is a concerted effort there, as there is in so many other places, to deny the obvious because people are afraid of the consequences of telling the truth. But as I say, eyewitnesses were reported as saying that this was Fulanis and this is thus a jihad attack. It's a shame that in Nigeria, as well as in so many other places, there's such fear that people shy away even from enunciating rather obvious truths.
And it's a situation where obviously there can be other groups that attack Christians. There could be other groups that want to go on, these kind of attacks. So occasionally you hear like, there's been an attack in Norway, and you would assume, because a lot of these attacks generally come from terrorists, Islamic terrorist groups, but occasionally you get an Anders Breivik in there. And most mosque attacks are from Muslims of a different sect, but occasionally you get that guy in New Zealand and so on. And in Africa, most of the terrorist attacks you hear have something to do with like Boko Haram or Islamic State or something. But there can be some other groups that decide to go on a killing spree. One interesting thing that was pointed out, because whatever the case was, these are people who are targeting Christians.
It's impossible that it was Fulanis. It's just that eyewitnesses said this.
Yeah.
And there were also, I should say, even though I was inundated on Twitter with people lambasting me for reporting this, there were also many other Nigerians responding to their countrymen and saying, oh, this was Fulanis. It's obvious this was Fulanis. Mm-hmm. The eyewitnesses said it was Fulanis. So it's not as if this is going out on a limb in some way or something.
Mm-hmm. And this is, I just read right before that attack. I mean, like 3 or 4 days before, I read an article posted by Raymond Ibrahim. And the title, this is May 30th. So this is barely over a week ago, and just a few days before the attack in Nigeria. And his article for the Middle East Forum is titled, "For the United Nations, a single mosque attack outweighs countless church massacres." And so he's pointing out that the United Nations commemorated March 15th as International Day to Combat Islamophobia, because there was a terrorist attack a while back, a couple of years ago in New Zealand. And because of that, because there was a terrorist attack on a mosque, two mosques in New Zealand, therefore we need this international day to combat Islamophobia. But then, so Raymond Ibrahim then points out, he just lists the attacks on churches over the past few years. And it's Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Pakistan, Iraq, another in Nigeria, Egypt, another in Nigeria, Egypt, Indonesia, Egypt, Philippines, Indonesia, Pakistan, Germany, interestingly, Egypt, Russia, France, attacks on churches. And so it's just interesting that you can have these attacks on churches a couple times a year and no one cares. But as soon as someone attacks a mosque and it's not another Muslim group, hey, we need the United Nations to jump into action. Interesting stuff. Interesting.
Must always be advanced, and the narrative is always that Muslims are victims, no matter what happens. And there's actually the other big story this week is related in that way, and that is the story out of India of Nupur Sharma, the former spokeswoman now for the ruling party, the BJP, and she was in a debate on television, and she said that there were I'm sorry, here I have it here, just a second.
You have what she actually said, because I read like 5 articles, because people started sending me messages. David, could you make a video about this? I started looking through all the main articles, CNN, BBC, and so on, looking through them. I couldn't find what she said. She said something offensive towards Muslims, and I'm thinking, well, you could say something. If she said like, we need to kill Muslims or something, like if she said something like that, then I would be like, okay, yeah, you need to lose your spot and so on. If she said something that's actually true, then what's the uproar about? So I actually have no clue what she said. I could not find it. If anyone has the actual clip, let me. And it was subtitles where I could see. Please send me that. But you got something that gives what she said?
I do not have the exact words, but Op India reported on May 28th. This is the quote that that report has. She pointed out that Prophet Muhammad had married a 6-year-old Aisha, and he had consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old.
Wait, so she stated 2 facts about Muhammad that I talk about all the time?
Yeah. And then this Indian Muslim journalist, Mohammed Zubair, published an edited version of what she said that I haven't seen what he did with it. And the Op India report doesn't say. It only says that he used it to gin up this campaign against her. And it's been wildly effective. Not only was she suspended from the party where she was the spokeswoman, but the Indian government is under fire. The several Muslim countries have formally complained, summoned the ambassador, and so on. And everybody is all upset about this terrible insult to Muhammad that she made, when the defense that is being mounted in her favor is that what she said is readily establishable in Islamic texts. It's just that she said it. And it's rather like drawing cartoons of Muhammad. In Shiite Islam, there's a long tradition of making images of Muhammad. And there are plenty of examples. But when we drew Muhammad in Texas, ISIS came to kill us. It's when an infidel does it, it's a different matter. And so it seems that that's what's at play here, that she crossed a line in the sense of saying something that was entirely true, but in a manner that showed that she did not approve of it. And so that's reminiscent of Islamic law's provision for the dhimmis, that they must not mention something impermissible about Allah or the Quran or Muhammad. Not false, but impermissible. And that's the exact words in Reliance of the Traveler, the Shafi'i legal manual. And it's interesting to note that it doesn't say you can't tell lies about Islam. It says you can't mention something impermissible. And that seems to be what she did here.
Yeah, and that is you have a couple different categories. So you could say something that's actually inciting violence, and then that that should rightly get you into trouble. Then you could say something that's not inciting anything of the sort, and it's false. So if you started saying Muhammad's an alien or something like that, and he was, he was here to conquer the world in the name of some alien species or something like that. Well, there you'd be spouting nonsense. It would be weird to get into trouble for saying something, especially if you're mocking it or something like that. But then you have what's insane about Islam is, as you just pointed out, you could be saying something that's totally factual and you get in trouble for that, right? You could just read from their sources and not even say a word that's critical, but if they just know you're not on the side of it and agreeing with it,
That's it.
they're coming after you. And the sad part here is, I mean, think of the example that just set. If that's all she said, if all she said during a debate was something that is a factual statement about Muhammad, and then the uproar gets her fired from her position. One, that encourages all the complainers. Hey, if you want to get your way in the world, just keep flipping out over anyone who says anything about your prophet. But two, I mean that sets an example for people who would think of stating facts about Muhammad. Hey, don't do that. If you're part of any position within the government, don't ever state facts about Islam or Muhammad that will embarrass Muslims, or you'll be fired. So it's a dangerous game.
And that's exactly it. And it's a game they've been playing for years. This is the highest profile example of it. But I encountered this back in 2006. I guess it was. I wrote The Truth About Muhammad, which is a biography of Muhammad based on Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Hisham, and the biographical, the Sirah material, and the Hadith, and so on. All pretty straightforward stuff. And Dr. Khalil Muhammad, a professor at the University of California, San Diego, was absolutely livid and wrote this unhinged attack, saying he tells lies about Muhammad in this book. He says Muhammad married his daughter-in-law. And I was kind of amazed, and I thought, he's just trying to get away with something here.
Mm-hmm.
He's counting on people not knowing that Muhammad married his daughter-in-law, and he's trying to fool us. But I think there's more to it now. I realize I had said something impermissible. In other words, non-Muslims are not supposed to notice things that would fall into the criterion of embarrassment. They're not supposed to notice the things that Muslims might be embarrassed about in the canonical stories about Muhammad. And if we do, then it's our fault. And what happens is what's happening to Nupur Sharma now.
I have a comment from India here. David from India here. She literally said, Muhammad married a 6-year-old and consummated marriage at 9. What if I make fun of it? In response to a Muslim making fun of Hinduism. So responding to a Muslim making fun of Hinduism by saying, hey, what if I make fun of Muhammad for this? And that's, I mean, I can't verify this because anyone could have just sent me that comment, but that's pretty creepy. That is pretty creepy. I mean, I look at, given the history of Islam in India, I'd be willing to cut some slack towards someone who said some things that are critical of Muhammad, right? Like even if it was just a person just blasting away at Muhammad, I'd be like, all right, you people in India got a right to to blast away there more than most people. But I mean, to just say something completely true directly from the Muslim sources that Muslims themselves are talking about here in the West and saying there's actually no problem with having sex with a 9-year-old girl and actually pushing this on people. People need to be aware of this stuff, but you just can't say it. Sad world, sad world.
Indeed. Yeah, I got a whole list actually at Jihad Watch. I publish it occasionally of Muslim clerics and various Islamic authorities all around the world saying there's no minimum age for marriage. You can marry a little baby if you want to, etc. And that all comes from the same thing, from Muhammad's example. Anyway, I got so much more jihad, David. Awful lot of jihad. Of course, we did miss a week. I'm sorry for that, but there's also just very much jihad activity. It's interesting to note that the Indian government, in response to all this controversy over this, is behaving very much like a Sharia state or a dhimmi state. 3 people were arrested on June 7th, just yesterday, for Facebook posts supporting Nupur Sharma, and were accused of hurting Muslim sentiments. Now, hurting Muslim sentiments is actually a phrase that I see a lot. It's a criminal offense in Indonesia, I believe, and elsewhere. It's a phrase that is very, very commonly used, and something that is used in the sense of this is a deplorable and unacceptable thing to do. And there's the assumption all over the world that it is the obligation of the non-Muslims to respect Muslim sensibilities, even to the extent of adopting their perspective on what can and cannot be said. And these people were arrested for not sufficiently paying attention to that. Speaking of not paying sufficient attention to Muslim sensibilities, I got another out of Michigan. Interesting story of a woman named Halana Bow, who is apparently a convert to Islam, very devout, wears the hijab, but she was stopped in Ferndale, Michigan, for a traffic violation. And I don't know what happened next, because the news reports say that she was stopped for a traffic violation and subsequently arrested. So, I've been stopped for traffic violations and not been hauled in to the station. This has happened to me more than once. And so I had to wonder, what did she do? Did she insult the officer? Did she argue with him? Was there something in her car?
I'm guessing it's just straightforward Islamophobia. He saw the hijab and locked her up.
Well, what happened is she goes to the station. They want to take the mugshot. They take off her hijab. So she complains to the Council on American Islamic Relations. They sue, and they win an undisclosed amount. And I got to tell you, I think this is just a total shakedown, because we just had the story. We were talking about it a few weeks ago, David, out of Australia, of that psychopathic woman, Momina Shoma, who stabbed her landlord in the neck in Australia. And then she was in prison, and she had a garden shears hidden in her hijab and attacked another inmate in the prison with the garden shears. This is a vivid illustration of the fact that things can be hidden in the hijab, and that can be lethal. And so to act as if this is just straight up Islamophobia and no security issue is ridiculous. But they got a court to go for it, and they cashed in, and that's what it's all about.
Must be nice.
Indeed. There is also a story out of where was it? I don't have it in front of me. Oh, here it is. This was also a similar story out of where was it? I don't see where it was. It's somewhere in the United States, David. I'm sorry. The Muslim woman wearing a hijab walks into McDonald's. Oh, it was no, sorry. I don't have that. In any case, she walks into McDonald's with her 2 twin sons, 7 years old. Mm-hmm. And they order a fish sandwich. And they get the sandwich, and there's bacon on it. And so they are suing now. And CARE is on the case. And the woman, Gadir Al-Ahmar, says, McDonald's made my children and me feel unwanted and worthless by intentionally stuffing a fish sandwich full of bacon for no other reason than to punish us for our faith. And the CARE lawyer says McDonald's employees willfully added bacon to the complainant's food in an effort to offend, humiliate, and cause distress to the complainant and her young children. Oh, I got it. This was out of the Boston area, actually. Chicopee, Massachusetts.
Hey,
Now,
I used to live in Chicopee.
okay, so maybe you went to McDonald's there sometime.
Huh?
I've
Did I?
been to McDonald's in my life, and I can tell you that I didn't see the people making the stuff. They're back behind the place where they've got all the burgers there waiting. And so, in the first place, it's unbelievable because they expect somebody to have been peeking out and see this Muslim family and hate Muslims and be malicious and decide to load the sandwich up. When, or, I've even had people since I wrote about this actually say, I used to work at McDonald's. We never saw who was ordering what. It just came in on this board and you filled the orders. That was it. And so the idea that this was some sort of a targeted hate crime is ridiculous. But they know that McDonald's has a lot of money and doesn't want bad publicity. And so probably they will pay this woman some money to make this all go away. And that's the whole idea.
Yeah, we know there are scams and stuff. On the one hand, I mean, bacon does not go on a fish sandwich. There is no bacon option usually for the fish sandwich, so that looks suspicious. On the other hand, yeah, those guys are in back cooking up things, and they just get a little readout that says make a fish sandwich. So that's where the I guess debate's going. I guess they're going to have to say someone saw them and then went back to make their fish sandwich or something like that. But then there's the issue of some people fake this kind of stuff. In other words, they bring in a pocket full of bacon, stick it on something to make to make a sandwich, and then they got me. People do stage hate crimes, believe it or not. So anyway, not accusing this woman of staging a hate crime or whatever that is, but my goodness, we've certainly had a long stretch of fake hate crimes. So hope she got some good some good video footage from inside the McDonald's showing her get the sandwich, open it up, be shocked, not bringing anything with her.
Indeed. Okay, I got so much more. Let's go to the UK, where we have a film, Lady of Heaven, which is about Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. And the film was made by people who are respectful of Islam, to the extent that Fatima is never shown. Her face is never shown. She is a faceless character shrouded by a black veil to avoid idolatry. However, this film ran afoul of Muslims who believe it to be blasphemous. And they have been threatening and protesting against the film to the degree that it has now been pulled from theaters in Britain, costing the producers $15 million. And the producer of the film, Malik Schlibach, who might well be a Muslim himself, said that the cinema chain was bowing down to radical extremists. And I think, well, what did you expect? This is Britain in 2022. Appeasement is the name of the game.
Yeah, and whenever they do that, then I end up wanting to watch a movie that I wouldn't otherwise have watched.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
So now I feel like I have to find this movie and go see it. I don't see it playing in any theaters near me. Guys, if you know how else to watch that movie, if it's available for streaming or something like that, let me know, because I'd like to check that one out.
Okay, let's see. In India as well, another spokesman for the BJP, the ruling party, Prashant Umrao Patel, he noted that there was a Hindu symbol found in a mosque. Now, this was widely reported. I don't really think that it's a controversial question as to whether the Hindu symbol was found in the mosque, but the whole meaning, the import of that, is that the mosque was built at the site of a Hindu temple. And this is a very controversial issue in India. As you know from the history of Jihad, there were thousands of temples that were destroyed and mosques built over them. It's not really a seriously disputed question that this happened. But whenever there are specific cases it's becoming a thorny property issue today, with Muslims saying that they own the mosque and it's their land and so on, and Hindus saying, no, it's not, it's stolen, and so on. And so in any case, this man has now gone into hiding because he has received multiple threats to behead him, as you might expect. In the United States, there has recently also been some controversy regarding the coalition between the political left and Islamic groups in the United States. We touched on this earlier with Ilhan Omar and Muhammad Hijab getting angry with her. But what's interesting is that Muslim leaders have been noticing that in all the controversy about abortion, and of course, the possibility is there that with the leaked draft opinion of the Supreme Court, the possibility has arisen that Roe v. Wade, the pro-abortion Supreme Court decision, might be overturned. And in response, many political spokesmen have been saying that the Republican Party, which is generally but not completely pro-life, is just like the Taliban and wanting to impose Sharia on the United States. And Muslim leaders have started to protest against this and said, really, you shouldn't compare them to Sharia because Sharia is wonderful and Islam is not against abortion anyway. And so it's interesting that people generally assume that there is a congruence between the conservative Christians and conservative Muslims in their moral outlook, but this is not actually the case. And
Yeah, I haven't. This is from years ago when I looked into this, but I recall some hadiths saying that the something like the soul is not joined to the child
yeah,
until after 4 months. So I've seen Muslims say there's no problem for the first 4 months because it is a soulless creature.
yeah. And what's even worse for the Muslim leaders in all this is that these leftists who would readily denounce you and me as Islamophobes and readily praise Sharia as part of their commitment to diversity and multiculturalism are suddenly in another context behaving as if Sharia were something bad. And we touched on this last time with Mia Farrow, but it's not just her. And so they must be so chagrined with all these people that they thought that they had thoroughly won over suddenly reveal that they're secret Islamophobes at heart.
Can I just say I am really looking forward to seeing how this unfolds because you've got alliances of groups that have absolutely no business aligning with each other. And if you actually listed their views, it's like this is some oil and water stuff right here. But they've been mixed by just constantly stirring them up. But this is going to be interesting to watch.
Indeed, it is. Okay, let's go to Germany. Interesting story out of Germany. This is another dumb infidel story. Plenty of dumb infidel stories this week. This was a story out of last October. We weren't doing this back then, I don't think. A gentleman, a 26-year-old Afghan refugee, went into a church, the Frauenberg Church in Nordhausen, Germany, and he started to throw things out of the church, just tear everything he could take loose and throw it out. And he took the figure of Christ off the wall and broke it in pieces and threw it out of the church. It's interesting to note that he himself confessed to the crime, and the report, let me see where this report is from. This is from MDR, which is a German language paper, and I published a translation of their story about this. The MDR story says that he did not, he acted out of his faith and had a problem with the figure of Christ in the Frauenberg church. And his lawyer, Marco Siebold, says that the perpetrator does not see the injustice of what he did. And then the MDR report says, however, his motivation is unclear. Now, David, I'm afraid his motivation is quite clear. He himself said it, that he did it because of his faith. So there's really nothing unclear about his motivation. He told us what it was. But because what he told us is something that so many non-Muslims don't want to hear, authorities are trying to find some other way to explain why he did this.
Yeah, I saw. Wait, hang on. Some people said my mic is too low. Let me see. Check, 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 check. That's about all I can do there. What the heck is going on? I might have messed with my settings earlier. I would have to. Yeah, I would have to mess around with the internal settings because this is as loud as it's making me get here. All right, so I'll check my mic settings afterwards. Yeah, I saw an episode of Law and Order where this guy waged this jihad attack on some people, and I forget what the story was, and he was calling it jihad, and he was saying he had to slaughter the unbelievers in the name of Allah, but they kept on probing and probing and probing, and it turned out that something like he was just anti women because of some bad experiences that he'd had before he converted to Islam, and he only converted to Islam because he was anti women and wanted to be able to claim it was because of some religion, even though it wasn't. And so that's why, Robert, they can't be sure of the motive, even if you're saying, hey, I slaughtered them in the name of Allah because of this and this and that, or whatever you're giving as your motives, there's got to be something else. And that's why there's always the great mystery of what's causing it.
Well, we know jihad is an interior spiritual struggle, so we know it couldn't be that. And we know when he says, I did it for my faith, we know his faith is benign and a great boon and benefit to all Western countries. Consequently, it has to be something else. In a similar vein, we had the story of Abdul Malik A. The last names are not released in Germany. And he came up to a woman, stabbed her in the throat while she was gardening in her yard. And he was angry because he said women should not work, and she was working. In any case, even though he has been quite clear about that, he has been sent to a psychiatric hospital. Of course, there's no other possible motive that he could have had for stabbing someone in the neck other than that he's psychologically disturbed. There isn't any other possible reason why he would have done that. None whatsoever.
None.
Meanwhile, another infidel in France betrayed, like the ones the Muslim leaders in the U.S. were complaining about, betrayed that he knows that Islam is not all polka dots and moonbeams the way that we're told. And this came about in the trial of a gentleman named Hussein Ahmed. And Hussein Ahmed is accused of rape and murder. He is a Syrian native, and he's on trial now. And his lawyer has said the pitfall of this trial is the cultural difference between Syria and France. And apparently the lawyer is offering the cultural difference between Syria and France to explain why this man would have killed his wife and child. The idea that, of course, there is some culture that would allow for this in some way, that would allow, say, for the beating of women from whom you fear disobedience, or the killing of people to restore the honor of your family, and so on. These kinds of things are generally never acknowledged in the West. and those who do acknowledge them are criticized for doing so. But then when it comes to things like this trial, suddenly they do know about them. That is, governing authorities and police and so on. And I find that very strange, really, that these things don't seem to exist except in time when they suddenly become useful.
It'll be interesting if it's a successful defense of some sort.
Indeed, that could be catastrophic, really, for France, for all of Europe, because there are plenty of other crimes that can be consigned to cultural differences, given the fact that Islam teaches warfare against unbelievers, teaches that you can take infidel women as sex slaves, and so on. There are many, many crimes that this defense could be used in. In Pakistan, we have several similar crimes. Actually, in one case, a Muslim gentleman murdered his wife. His name is Zulfikar Jiskani, and he killed his wife Babli Jiskani for resisting his attempt to marry off their underage daughter at a hefty price. Now, she was, of course, disobedient in doing that, and consequently ran afoul not only of the wife-beating passage that we referred to before, but also one that you have referred to in previous shows about how, is it 3336, that you are not to question what Allah and His Messenger have settled.
And so, yeah, that and 465.
So there you go. So these things mean that she is an infidel and consequently can lawfully be killed. Interesting to note that even in the context of all of this going on, or against the backdrop, I should say, of all of this going on, we have people like Saufsan Chebli, who is from a Muslim background but doesn't appear to be all that observant. She is a German politician for the Social Democrats, which is a pretty far left party, does not wear the hijab, and so on. But she recently noted that anti-Semitism threatens us all, she said, and it also threatens Muslims in particular. Now, I thought that was an interesting statement, given the fact that anti-Semitism is actually the term that's generally used for acts of hatred against Jews, not Muslims at all. But we know how effective the victimhood card is when it is played, and thus how often it is played. And so I thought that was an amusing example of that.
Yeah, and also the fact that Islam is a source of quite a bit of anti-Semitism, right? With the claim that the Jews are the well, of course, the worst of creatures, along with Christians and polytheists. But then the Jews, along with the polytheists, are the worst of enemies to the Muslims, according to the Quran. Then you have the claims that the end isn't going to come until Muslims are actually hunting Jews down, and they're hiding behind trees, and the trees are saying, "Hey, there's one over here, come get him." And so it's just amazing that you have an ideology that actively promotes anti-Semitism to the point where you have to ultimately be waging war against the people of this group. And then you say, who are the real victims of the anti-Semitism? The people who serve the ideology that calls for it. Them. It's like next it's going to be like, and you know who else is a huge victim of anti-Semitism? Hitler. Like, what? What are you talking about? What are you even talking about there, right? You're not making any sense.
Yep. You know, David, also anti-Semitism is so prevalent in Muslim communities because of the deep anti-Semitism in the Quran, but it's also in the culture. You know, Bosch Fawston, the cartoonist, grew up in a very secular Muslim household. They considered themselves Muslims, but were not devout by any stretch of the imagination. But he said that everyone in his family and everyone in his extended family and everyone he knew hated Jews. It was just part of the culture. And this was growing up in New Jersey in the 80s. You know, this is not in Afghanistan or somewhere. And this is just because of the, you know, actually, I remember when we were doing Islamicize Me, and I was watching you film some of the other segments, and it was just cracking me up. I'm glad that I was able not to laugh too loud to get on the mess up the soundtrack. But in any case, you were at one point, you remember you were saying something had happened and you were looking very serious and very concerned and said, I know that the Jews have somehow gotten into something or other and done this. And I thought, I wonder if people really realize how true to life and realistic that is. That there's so much of this kind of reflexive knee-jerk anti-Semitism in all too many Muslim communities.
Yeah, I think I remember the scene I may remember the scene you're talking about, but we had read we got thirsty and we read the passages that say that water is not made impure by anything, and you can even drink water that has dead animals floating in it and stuff like that, and you could perform your ablutions with water that has dead dogs and human waste and used menstrual cloths dumped into it, because Muhammad said water is not made impure by anything. So we drink this water with a bunch of dead animals floating in it. Well, I don't drink it, they did. They drink the water, and so they both get sick, and later on we're trying to figure out why they're sick and they're throwing up, and I go, I know, some Jews must have poisoned our dead donkey water.
Oh man, the classics.
That is it is interesting because, you know, we keep hearing, like, you know, about all the racism in the West and so on, and like actual racists, like people who are like anti-black and so. I know they exist. I was locked up with some of them, right? You have these, you know, white supremacists and so on that I was locked up. They do exist, but you don't run into a lot of people like that. It's pretty rare. Like even on the internet, it's pretty rare for me to be seeing a lot of that kind of racism. But I see remarks about Jews all the time. Like every day I'll see in the comment section people still complaining about Jews and so on. So it seems like if you want to go looking for some bigotry there, I see a lot of that.
Oh yeah. I don't have a good segue for that, but I do have an important story out of the Philippines.
First time you didn't have a segue.
First time, yeah, I'm slipping, David. Anyway, this is a story about the MILF, and that's the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. I think it's...
You knew what you were doing there. you knew it.
I tried. Anyway, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front is a jihad group in the Philippines. It has not been active for several years because they signed an accord with the Philippine government, which gave them essentially an autonomous region where Sharia would be implemented in the south, on the island of Mindanao. And 11,000 former MILFs have...
All right, we got to be serious here. This is the time to be deadpan, right? This is the time to be deadpan. All right. I'm going to try.
Yeah.
I'm going to try. Go ahead.
David, 11,000 former members of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front have now they have now joined the Philippine police force.
So now you've got 11,000 MILFs on the Philippine police force.
It's a movie, MILF Cops.
What's funny is you could actually make a movie called MILF Cops, and that would do well here. It's similar, like I like when I'm up at night, and, you know, working on my computer or something like that. I like noise in the background, even if I'm not paying any attention to it. So I'll like put I'll put like Law and Order or something like that on, or something I don't have to pay attention to. But then all of a sudden it'll be, you know, some sex island show. I'm like, what the heck is this, right? Got to change that stuff. But MILF Cops. I mean, if any Hollywood producers are watching right now, MILF Cops you make a lot of money doing that show.
and then they find out it's about policemen in the Philippines.
Yeah, I
But
could go make that myself. I could go down there, film those guys, and then release my show, MILF Cops. And
you'd get a lot of hits. In any case, the problem, of course, here is that this is predicated on the assumption that jihadis can be de-radicalized, as the term is, and that has actually never been proven. And there are de-radicalization programs all over the West, and they do not have a record of success. As a matter of fact, they were even closed down in France a few years back, and the French authorities admitted that it just was not working. And this is because they're predicated on the idea that Islam is peaceful and benign, and that the true Islam, properly understood, is entirely cuddly and warm. And so all you have to do is get these jihadis and teach them the true Islam, and they will turn from jihad, because jihad is based on a twisting and hijacking of the true peaceful religion. Now, since all of that is a lot of hooey, they end up remaining jihadis and returning to the jihad. So I'm a little bit concerned about the Philippine police force in the future, now that they have 11,000 MILF cops.
well, and there something people just never take into account is like probabilities, right? And it's suppose you think that the de-radicalization programs are generally effective. Now we've even seen Muslims who've been de-radicalized by some other means pointing out that the programs are a joke. That these things that you think are de-radicalizing people aren't working with anyone who knows what they're talking about. But just
Antonio said that just recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so just imagine. Let's suppose you thought they were, let's say, 90% effective. You thought, okay, they're not. Well, let's suppose you thought they're 90% effective. Okay, you just got 11,000 new police on your force. If you think 90% are de-radicalized, wait, that's 10%. That's 1,100 cops you just signed on to your force who are actually waiting for an opportunity to wage jihad on people.
Even if you had 100 cops who were jihadis, they could wreak havoc.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. Let's see. I had a good one here queued up. Oh, yeah. This was another story out of India. All the unrest in India over Nupur Sharma saying that Muhammad had a 6-year-old wife. There was some mob violence in one area where people were asked their names by the mob. And if they had Islamic names, they were let go. But if they had Hindu names, they were attacked. And this, of course, is something that we have seen. I think people don't know how often this has happened. I have a long list here at Jihad Watch. I won't read it all since we are coming up to the end, but I will note that this has also happened in the United States. And I would wager that most people have no idea of that. But there was a Somali Muslim named Dahir Adan in St. Cloud, Minnesota in 2016. And he went to the St. Cloud Mall, and he would stop people and ask them if they were Muslim or Christian. Quite a lot of Muslims in that area, so it was a reasonable question, not out of the blue, as it would be in some parts of the United States even still. And if they answered that they were Christian, he stabbed them. If they answered that they were Muslim, he let them go. There are many other incidents of this where Muslims ask people, they get a group of people together and ask them to recite the Fatiha or some other prayer from Islam. And if they can, they are spared, but if they cannot, they are killed. We recently actually had a story that we discussed that went that way. I believe it was in Mozambique recently. In any case, it's happened all over, I can say. I see here in Nigeria several times, in Burkina Faso, Mozambique, the Philippines, Mali, Kenya. That was a big one. In Westgate Mall, they asked people various questions about Islam, murdered those who couldn't answer. This has also taken place elsewhere in Kenya, in Bangladesh, even in Belgium. And so this reflects, I think, perhaps most vividly the Quran passage 48:29, chapter 48, verse 29. Muhammad is the apostle of Allah. Those who follow him are ruthless to unbelievers, merciful to one another.
And you have a couple of different views on this, which we see playing out in the world. You have views within Islam where it's acceptable to kill your fellow Muslims as collateral damage as long as you're targeting the unbelievers. And the reasoning there was that the early generations of Muslims would use catapults to attack towns, even though the catapult could always hit your fellow Muslims, but they thought that was okay and so on. So that's the reasoning. And so that's why you'll have Al-Qaeda and so on not hesitate to destroy a building, even if there are Muslims in there, or they're not the ones you were attacking, and so you're okay. But then you have Muslims who really want to be careful about killing their fellow Muslims, don't even want to kill them as collateral damage, and so on. And so then you get the little pop quiz before you get popped in the head. Interesting stuff.
Okay, so we have several other stories of the same dispiriting variety. Democratic Republic of the Congo, jihad raids on a village, 18 people killed, houses burnt down. Nigeria, an interesting story actually. The Jamar Ansarul Muslima fi Biladi Sudan, also known as the Ansaru, that is the helpers, the Ansar. That's a group going way back to the beginning of Islam. The helpers, the Muslims who converted in Medina rather than those who came from Mecca with Muhammad. But in any case, this group issued a statement because they have been blamed for an attack on a train that took place in March. And they said, no, they did not attack the train. And they explained that they do not kill or abduct people unless they are sure that they are infidels. And so that is, here again, is this distinction between Muslims and non-Muslims, which runs through all of Islam and guides the choice of victims for jihad.
And it's this strange situation where everyone who sees it being played out in the world is horrified by it, but if you point out where it comes from, you're the bad guy. You're just the bad guy.
There we are again. So I see we're up to an hour here, so I think I got some more, but perhaps we should call a halt at this point.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that's been an hour of this week in Jihad. For those of you who haven't been on previous live streams where we talked about some resources, check the description box. If you do not have a copy of Robert Spencer's book, The Critical Quran, the link is there. You definitely need that one in your library, along with the history of jihad. In fact, if you get those two books, you'll be pretty well equipped for dealing with issues that come up from the Quran or issues that come up when discussing jihad. So definitely grab both of those if you don't have them already. All right, Robert. Well, every week we always think that we're done with jihad because, I mean, think about it. Everyone is telling us that jihad is just in our minds. Politicians, journalists, the entire education system, the entire entertainment industry, everyone always bombarding us with the claim that this is all in our mind. It has nothing to do with Islam. And we keep trying to believe them, but reality keeps overpowering their voices. And so it's just this 1400-year scream of Allahu Akbar telling us that, no, it does have something to do with Islam. All right, so hope we're not back next week, but we'll see y'all next week for more This Week in Jihad. Unfortunately, sadly, that's the world we live in. You don't like it? Do something about it.